Welcome to Chapter 4 of the Cisco Networking Academy, Cybersecurity Essentials. Chapter 4 is going to cover protecting the organization, and a note here, I'm going to combine Chapter 4 and Chapter 5 into the same video because Chapter 5 is a very short chapter and it would only be a couple of minutes, so I'm just going to put those both together so that we have fewer videos to upload and for you to load on your end for the classrooms. So we're just going to combine Chapter 4 and 5 together. Chapter 4, Protecting the Organization. In Chapter 4, we're going to take a look at firewalls, explaining techniques to protect organizations from cyber attacks, and behavior approach to cybersecurity, and explain what that is. And then we're also going to take a look at Cisco's approach to cybersecurity. And then after that, we're going to take a look at Chapter 5. So first up, firewalls. So what are firewalls? Firewalls, if you go, the original term for it was when you had a building and they would put a firewall in the place. If you had multiple multiple families or multiple businesses, they would put a firewall up in the building so that if a fire started, it would keep the fire from spreading to other parts of the building. Hence the term a firewall. In terms of technology and what we do, a firewall filters incoming and outgoing communications on a network device. So common firewall types are network layer firewall. That's where source and destination IP addresses are scanned or filtered. Transport layer firewall. That's where source and destination data ports and connection states are filtered. Application layer firewall. That's where the application programmer service is filtered. And then we have context-aware application firewall. That's where it looks at users, devices, roles, application types, and threat profiles. And then we have a proxy server. That's web content requests are filtered. Reverse proxy servers. That protects, hides, and offloads and distributes access to web servers. You have a NAT, a network address translation firewall. That hides or masquerades the private addresses of network host. And then you have host-based firewalls. That's filtering of ports and system service calls on a single computing operating system. So what is port scanning? It's a process of probing a computer, server, or other network host for open ports. There are a number of different pieces of software that will just run port scans, and it will just either use the ping process or use some other kind of process to see what ports are open on a network to probe those and then see if there's vulnerabilities open on those. Port numbers are assigned to each running application on a device. By the nature of networks itself, you have to be able to connect to another network or another device. You have to have ports open and available. And so with that you can do port scanning. So you do some type of reconnaissance tool like Nmap. That's another port scanning tool. You can find out if ports are open and accepting, closed, denied, or not listening at all, or filtered, dropped, or blocked. And you note you always want to have ports closed if you're not using them. If you have to have a port open and use it, then it needs to be open and that's fine. And you want to make sure that all the security processes are in place. But if you're not using a port, it needs to be closed and locked down so that no one can scan it and find a vulnerability for it. Now, when we talk about security appliances, there's different types of appliances that we have. We have routers. They can have firewall capabilities. They can traffic filter, IPS, encryption, and use VPNs. Firewalls, hardware, or security appliances, they may also have router capabilities, advanced network management, and analytics. You might have an IPS that's dedicated to intrusion prevention or an intrusion prevention system. A VPN is designed for secure encrypted tunneling, a virtual private network. So you create a point on each end and you're essentially tunneling, or you're creating a hole to encrypt all your data to go from one side to the other. You have malware and antivirus. Cisco Advanced Malware Protection comes in next generation Cisco routers, firewalls, IPS devices, security appliances, and it can also be installed as software in host computers. And then you have other type of security devices as well, including web and email security appliances, decryption devices, client access control servers, and security management systems. Now, when we're trying to detect attacks in real time, we have what we call a zero-day attack. That means that a hacker is exploiting a flaw in a piece of software before the creator can fix it. So someone finds out that there's an exploit or that there's a way to gain access to a system, and the creators or they don't know about it yet. And so that's called a 0-day attack. It doesn't necessarily happen in 0 days or 1 day. It could be over a period of 2 weeks even, but it's when an exploit has not been fixed yet. Then you have real-time scanning from edge to endpoint. That actively scans for attacks using firewall and IDS and IPS networking devices. Detection with connections to online global threat centers, and detecting network anomalies using context-based analysis and behavior detection. So what it does is it looks at network traffic, and if it sees anything out of the ordinary, if it sees a lot of requests for port scanning, for example, if it sees a lot of port scans come in, it might throw up a red flag and say, hey, we might have some issues on this network. Maybe just innocent, but there may be some issues, and so you might want to take a look at it. And so you would get an alert on that. Denial of service or directed denial of service attacks and real-time responses. One of the biggest threat attacks, it can cripple internet servers and network availability. Directed denial of service originates from hundreds or thousands of zombie or botnets, and the attacks appear as legitimate traffic. It looks like legitimate traffic coming from these botnets, but what it's designed to do is put so much traffic in toward that to that point that nothing else can get in. So how do we protect against malware? The Cisco AMP threat grid benefits security functions across the organization. You want to make sure that you have secure operations center team, that they have accurate, actionable data. You have an incident response team, and now these may be the same people, by the way. You may have people filling these same roles. In larger organizations, you're going to have multiple people. You may have one person doing all of these roles, but you need to have these. These are recommended by Cisco as far as security. They use forensically sound information to understand suspicious behavior. The threat intelligence team proactively improves security infrastructure, and the security infrastructure engineering team, they act in threat information faster and in an automated manner. Now, what are some of the security best practices? You want to perform risk assessments. That means knowing the value of what you're protecting will help in justifying security expenditures. You don't want to spend $1 million on security on a system for a $50,000 data. That's overkill. But if you've got millions of dollars worth of data, if your company that you're working for is going to go out of business if they were down or lost their business. An example I can remember, there was an engineering company, an engineering firm, and they had blueprints and designs and all kinds of proprietary designs for customers, and an IT person deleted those, stole them, deleted them, they were gone, and they couldn't recover, and the company eventually went bankrupt because of that. So you want to make sure that you are performing adequate risk assessments on the data and the equipment and hardware. You want to create a good, secure policy. Create a policy that clearly outlines company rules, job duties, and expectations. You want to make sure that physical security measures are in place. Make sure that you're restricting access to network closets, server locations, as well as have good fire suppression. I'm going to give you a personal anecdote. I worked for a company. I was doing some, I was working for helping get their servers set up, doing some contracting work for them. They had water sprinkler system in where the servers were. And when I first brought it up and I was like, hey, if these fire sprinklers go off, you're going to ruin all of your equipment here, which was worth probably, we probably had a couple $100,000 worth of hardware between the servers and the software. And I thought to myself, well, if this fire suppression goes off, this water suppression goes off, it's going to ruin all of this hardware in here. There was no protection for it whatsoever. But it was a company that mixed paint chemicals. And if there was a fire in that building and the fire spread, it could be significant loss of life. So there was a decision made to put fire suppression system in every part of the building, no matter what, because they could not afford a fire to spread. Because it wouldn't just be a fire that went through the building; it would be an absolute explosion. Because there was another paint mixing company not too many miles away in the next town over. A few years earlier that had happened, there had been a fire and it just exploded and killed people, and it was bad. So we took some preventative measures to make sure that we had some covers in place to make sure that if the water did go off, it was going to run off the servers. And, we did as best as we could, but we could not remove the water suppression out of that room. We talked about doing maybe some halon suppression, but they were not willing to spend that kind of money on it. You want to make sure that you have good human resource security measures. Employees should be properly researched with background checks. perform test backups, perform regular backups and test data recovery from backups. That same company that I was doing some work for, I tested their backups, and it was like 6 months worth of data had not been backed up. The person that was responsible for it was not an IT person. It was not their fault. They were just responsible for every day going in and taking the tape out, putting the other tape in, and taking that tape and doing a rotation to the bank and back and forth. And they kept their offsite rotation. They had the good process in place. It was just that the software wasn't executing and backing anything up. And so they didn't have anybody from the tech side working for them for a few months, and no one checked that. And so when I checked it, I said, well, let's just try to recover some data. The tapes were all blank for like the last 6 months. So we had to make sure that was a big, hey, we got to fix that real quick. You want to maintain security patches and updates. Regularly update your servers, your clients, your network device operating systems, and programs. You want to employ access controls. Configure user roles and privilege levels, as well as strong user authentication. It goes back to the need to know only basis. You don't want people having access that they shouldn't have access to. You want to test incident responses. Employ an incident response team and test emergency response scenarios. Coronavirus was caused this to go into practice with a lot of companies. A lot of companies had to put their incident responses into practice in their plans. And I know a company I'm currently working for, they said theirs worked fairly well. I mean, there was still a lot of unknowns, and some things didn't work right, but a lot of things did work right because they had some really good incident responses procedures in place. And so you want to test those and make sure, hey, let's do an emergency offsite. What happens if a tornado comes through and shuts the building down? What happens if there's protesters and we can't get to work and we can't get to the servers and we need to, get data backed up and stuff? What do you do to go through those scenarios? So you do disaster, you do different scenarios to try to figure out what's going to go wrong or what could go wrong. You cannot plan for everything, but you want to plan for most things. You want to implement a network monitoring, analytics, and management tool. Choose a good security monitoring solution that integrates with other technologies that are employed with your systems. You want to implement network security devices where appropriate. Use next-generation routers, firewalls, and other security appliances. I've been in companies that they've had routers that were 20 years old and have never been updated. They worked, and they just never updated them. And so you wanted to make sure, what part of my recommendation was, hey, we got to get this updated. It's going to cost you some money, but it's going to cost you money if you go down. You want to implement a comprehensive endpoint security solution. Use enterprise-level anti-malware and antivirus software. Educate users, and educate users. You want to make sure that security procedures are with your employees. I can't tell you how many times, it's your employees that you're going to be your first line of defense. It's going to be the users and employees that don't open the malware. I'll give you an anecdote real quick. I had a manager one time, and all of the employees knew, hey, if you get something suspicious, don't open it. If you still want, let IT know. We'll come take a look at it. We'll kind of check it out, check the headers out on the email. We'll quarantine it, see what's going on. Manager calls up and says, hey, I think this is suspicious from a sales rep. I said, okay, I'll be down in a few minutes. I was busy with servers at the time. It took me about 20 minutes to get down to them. Walk into the manager's office. Hey, I was here to check that out. Oh, it was nothing. It was just something about their birthday that they sent. It was just like a greeting card thing that they sent. It was a palm to the forehead because I was just like, what have we trained you for? And you're supposed to be a manager and you're supposed to be doing this better than the rest of the employees do this. So it's about training, and it's about making sure that you're not belittling your employees and users, but that you're training them so that they understand the severity of what could happen if they don't take the right measures, that it's part of their job to make sure that the company is secure. And then make sure that you're encrypting data. All sensitive company data, including email, should be encrypted where appropriate. So when we have a behavior approach to cybersecurity, a group of botnets connected to the internet, controlled by malicious individuals or groups, or a bot that's typically infected visiting a website. So you visit a website, or you open up malware, an infected media file, something along those lines. Maybe you get an ad served up to you on a website, and it's got some malicious software in there. And all of those infected will try to get through an appliance. Hopefully, you've got everything in place and it can't get through. They may still be able to do a denial of service attack, but there's steps you can, and it goes above and beyond this class, by the way. There's steps you can take to mitigate or lessen the severity of a denial of service attack. There's services you can use. There's services online that you can use to do that. The kill chain in cyber defense. Kill chain is the stages of information systems attack. You've got reconnaissance. That's where someone is gathering information. You got weaponization. That's where someone is targeted exploit or a malicious payload. Then you have the delivery. They send the exploit and malicious payload to the target. They exploit, or they execute the exploit. They have the installation. They install malware and backdoors. They then have command and control. That's remote control from a command and control channel on a server or somewhere off-site. And then they take action. They perform malicious actions or additional attacks on devices, maybe infect other machines, maybe download information, change information, whatever their goal is, but that's the action point. Another behavior-based security is what we call honeypots. That lures the attacker by appealing to the attacker's predictable behavior. So a honeypot would be like, oh, I set this pot of honey out there so all the bees and the flies and will go to that instead of to the real system. And what you do is you can capture logs and analyze the attacker's behavior, and the administrator can gain more knowledge and build better defenses again in the regular systems. So you set a honeypot out, it's maybe open ports and some different things that are kind of left open, and someone attacks it, and then you know somebody's in trying to get into your system, and you can see how they're trying to attack, and then you can make sure that your regular systems are fixed or up to date. Cisco's cyber threat defense solution architecture uses behavior-based detection and indicators, and it provides greater visibility and context and control. Netflow gathers information about data flowing through a network. It's important components in behavior-based detection and analysis, and it establishes baseline behaviors, and I've mentioned that before. Once you have a good baseline, anything that goes outside that baseline can be investigated. Now, Cisco's approach to cybersecurity, you have a computer security incident response team, or a CSIRT. That helps ensure the company system and data preservation by performing comprehensive investigations into computer security incidents, provides proactive threat assessment, mitigating planning, incident trend analysis, and security architecture review. And let's take a look at security playbooks. Collection of repeated queries against security event data sources that lead to incident detection and response. So what does it need to accomplish? It needs to detect malware-infected machines, detect suspicious network activity, detect irregular authentication attempts, describe and understand inbound and outbound traffic, provide summary information including trends, statistics, and counts, and then provide usable and quick access to statistics and metrics, and then correlate events across all relevant data sources. Some tools that you can use: security information and event management. That's software that collects and analyzes security alerts, logs, and other real-time and historical data. You have DLP, data loss prevention. That stops sensitive data from being stolen or escape from the network. It's designed to monitor and protect data in 3 different states. And then you have the Cisco Identity Services Engine, or the Cisco ISE, and TrustSec. That's user-based roles, access control policies. You have an IDS and IPS. IDS is intrusion detection system. It's usually placed offline. It does not prevent attacks. It just detects logs and reports what it sees so that you can check it and see what's been happening to your system. And then you have IPS, that's intrusion prevention system. That has an ability to block or deny traffic based on positive rules and signature matches. And then you have a combination of IDS and IPS system, maybe like Snort or SourceFire. And those can be a combination of software or hardware or software, or a combination of the two. Okay, so for Chapter 4, we looked at various types of firewalls. We looked at botnets, kill chains. We looked at Netflow, the function of CSIRT, security playbook, identify tools used for incident prevention and detection, and defining IDS and IPS. Next, we're going to take a look at Chapter 5 quickly. It'll just be at the end of Chapter 4. We're going to combine those together. So let's roll into Chapter 5. Chapter 5 for the Cybersecurity Essentials course is, will your future be in cybersecurity? This is where you start asking yourself, is this something I want to do for a living? And we're going to take a look at cybersecurity education and careers, legal and ethical issues facing cybersecurity professionals, and then describing some of those. So when we look at cybersecurity education and careers, there's personal and legal issues. You want to be responsible with your skills. When you learn how to do some of this hacking, make sure that you're not using it for gray hat, black hat. I mean, some people are going to. It's just there's going to be a certain percentage of people that do that. But you should be responsible with it. You should use it for good. Use your powers for good. Don't be the evil villain. There are corporate and legal issues. Businesses are required to abide by cybersecurity laws, and therefore they have to employ people that come in and put things in place for the cybersecurity. Breaking the law and you could lose your job and your company could be punished, thrown in jail, lose money, company could go bankrupt. And when you're not sure, you should consult the legal department. So when you're working in cybersecurity with the company, you want to make sure that you're working closely with legal to make sure that your things that you're putting in place and things that you're doing abide by legal. When in doubt, ask legal. Have them verify everything. You also have international law in cybersecurity. So if you are doing business internationally, you want to make sure that you're abiding by international laws, global partnership with world governments, industries, other academia. And then making sure that you're improving global capabilities when dealing with cyber threats. So personal ethical issues, legal behavior may still be unethical. So there's a difference between legal and ethical. And when I'm in class with my cybersecurity students, one of the things we have usually about a 30-minute to an hour-long discussion on is the difference between ethical and legal, that there's a difference between those two. What may be legal may not be ethical. I mean, you can do something, but it may not be ethical. And then whose ethical standards? So that's a discussion that you need to have, and you need to do some research on that, the difference between ethical and legal. There's corporate ethical issues. So there's ethics codes put in place by corporations, and a lot of times you have to sign agreements. I've signed plenty of agreements with companies and colleges when I work for them and saying, I'm going to abide by these rules and regulations. I know students that attend Ivy Tech Community College, where I teach some courses, the students sign up, they sign a statement saying that they're going to abide by the security. And sometimes when you sign into a system, you saying you're going to abide by those ethical practices of that company. Maybe legal, but it's not ethical, and you need to abide by those codes of behavior. And then the Cybersecurity Institute, CSI, sets some codes of ethics, ISSA and AITP. When you take a longer cybersecurity class, one of the cybersecurity classes I teach, we get more into, in fact, one of the assignments the students do is they pull up codes of ethics and they build kind of their own code of ethics as if they were building it for a company. Now, cybersecurity jobs, you can do some online searches. There's all kind of Monster, Career Builder. There's all kinds of different search sites out there. There's government sites. You can go into government. Cybersecurity is a wide range in IT, by the way, and it's not going away anytime soon. So if you're younger, if you're in your early 20s, you're still in high school and you're taking this class or you're looking at these videos, it's going to be around for a long time. It's going to be around well past my lifetime of cybersecurity. So as long as we have computers and networks and technology, we're going to need cybersecurity. So there's different types of cybersecurity jobs, though. You may have penetration testing and hacking, ethical hacking. You might have security administrators, network administrators, systems administrators. You may be going in and working as a network engineer, but you still need to have all that cybersecurity in there. You may be going in and building databases, but you still need to have cybersecurity in there. So networks, databases, software design, if you're setting up websites, you still have to have that security component to it. So it's a wide range. It's going to be around for a while. It could be the career for you. You just want to explore that. And if you have any questions on careers, I can't really give you a direct advice of, hey, go to this company, but I can kind of give you some kind of overarching advice. If you leave a comment below on the video and you have questions about, is cybersecurity right for you? Sometimes people just look at the money and they say, oh, I can go make a lot of money. But what they don't realize is cybersecurity sometimes can be boring. It's not like the television shows where you solve things in 30 minutes. Part of the reason that I like cybersecurity is because it changes a lot, but at the same time, it can be boring at times, because when you're doing all of the documentation, you're making sure everything's in place, but at the same time, it can be exciting as well. So you just want to make sure that it's the right career move for you. I hope all of the material for this entire series, the 5 chapters, Cybersecurity Essentials. Again, you can take this course for free. The link is in the description below at the Cisco Networking Academy. Stay safe and be excellent to each other.